The Texans and Joe Flacco's Linsanity run. CJ Stroud having himself a career performance. The Chiefs taking down the Dolphins in sub-0 degree weather. The Packers walking into Jerryland and taking down the Cowgirls. The Lions getting their first playoff win in over 30 years. The Bills finally playing against the Steelers and taking care of business. And the Buccaneers, the Baker Mayfield redemption tour continues. You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
Good evening. You are listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 Dean Radio and Secret Weapon Consulting. I'm Chris Costich, along with the founder, Adam Wright, and Mr. Joe Flacco is non-elite, CJ Medeiros. Super wild card weekend finally coming to a close, and it did not disappoint. We'll start with the Saturday games. Texans beating the Browns 45-14. And this was a close one up until the second quarter when the Texans went up 24-14. And it ended up being where Flacco threw those two interceptions. And it was he threw the first one and you thought, all right, well, there's your bad pick. It wasn't the worst pick in the world. And then back-to-back plays, he throws the second pick and you knew it was all over. It was all over. Texans were going to really take over from there. CJ Stroud, 16 for 21, 274 yards and 3 touchdowns. A near perfect quarterback rating on the day. Thoughts from you fellas? Just opening thoughts to start.
It was good while it lasted, but 2 pick sixes, sacked 4 times. This was a great performance by not just CJ Stroud, but also the Houston Texans defense. Just shows how far this team has come along in such a short amount of time. Such a young team and such a bright future. Nick Caserio, I've said this so many times over the past year or so. He's done a tremendous job since joining the Texans. He tore this team down and then built it back up in seconds. It's unbelievable.
Well, for me, this says more about no. It says more about the Texans, but let's just focus on the Browns real quick. Oh my God. What happened? Like the meme, what happened? You know something? I think this might be a case where maybe, just maybe, their injuries finally caught up with them. Because the injury bug was ravaged them like the Black Plague ravaged Europe, and yet the Browns kept fighting. They kept winning. Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, both of their offensive tackles and some other key pieces on defense out due to injury, and they just kept winning. And here, I think this is where you couldn't stave off the inevitable anymore because they were playing like an injured team. Joe Flacco threw more touchdowns to the Texans defense than he did his own team. And just what a statement, though, by Houston. You could go to the next round and, get blown out, but it doesn't matter because CJ Stroud is here. This is CJ Stroud's way of saying, I am here, I am legit, and I am the future of the Texans. And keep in mind, the Texans themselves have had quite a few injuries, most notably Tank Dell. And, you had some other guys on defense like Jonathan Grenard, among others, that missed some games. But the Texans are a good young team, and they're going to be exciting to watch. And I think this is the game, like I said, that puts CJ Stroud on the map. And he officially has as many playoff wins as Deshaun Watson does. So there's that.
It was It was Joe Flacco who was keeping this team afloat down the stretch. I mean, if they didn't bench Joe Flacco in the final game of the season, this team's 12-5. That's unheard of. That a quarterback way past his prime is coming back into the league after being on the couch 2 months ago and is leading your team to a high playoff spot. Like the 5th seed is nothing to sneeze at. That's just outside of being a division champion if it weren't for Lamar Jackson and company doing what they're doing over in Baltimore. So I just think we were all deluding ourselves and giving ourselves false hope by believing that Joe Flacco was going to take this team to a Super Bowl. I think we thought it was a great story. We were all hoping for it. He was playing well enough, but it wasn't going to last. And this past game proved that. I think we all thought, well, a lot of us thought there was going to be a really strong chance the Browns would beat them or at least put up a solid fight. This was a strong, cold, hard reality check.
Yeah, and you would have thought this game would have been closer too. I feel like the Browns, I was not expecting the Texans defense to step up the way they did. And to kind of piggyback off of that, I'm very disappointed in the Browns defense. You would have thought that they would have shown up, acted like a top 10 defense, and they must have just left their soul in Cleveland or something. The defense did not show up. Not saying that the offense didn't show up either, because they didn't. They only put up 14 points and they got shut out in the second half. But the Browns defense didn't help out the cause either. And CJ Stroud kind of just had his way all day with them, shredded them to pieces. Like I said, near perfect passer rating. And should be a fun one against Baltimore next week.
There was this one stat that one of the fan pages that we are associated with posted, and it was the home road splits for the Cleveland Browns defense, and the difference is actually astronomical.
I was actually just about to say, you can even look at their road record and think that the Browns were probably going to struggle in this game in general.
But I mean, it just shows how much their defense was. Here we go. By NFL Contents, shout out to you guys. This is a great post. At home, 13.8 points per game allowed. On the road, 31.3 points per game allowed. This is home road splits over the whole season. 126.3 yards per game allowed passing. That was at home. 215.8 on the road. Rushing yards per game, 89.5 allowed, pretty solid number. 118.1 on the road. Takeaways, tied at 14, so they were a pretty good team at taking the ball away. Home or on the road. Then obviously the record, 8-1 at home, 3-6 on the road. So it looks like this team really did live and die by the defense, a defense that this is a very rare case, especially since defenses travel. This one did not travel. This team, they left their best defense at home, which is usually not the case with defenses. So this is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like they got a bit of the old Cowboys syndrome there.
I was just about to say that. It really goes to show how important having a home playoff game can be. I mean, you look at all 6 games from this weekend, every single home team won besides the Cowboys.
That is true. Yeah, what a way they lost. We'll get to that soon.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to, before we move on, I just wanted this one question for you guys. How far do we really believe this Texans team can make it? Because they're having a little Linsanity run themselves with their youth movement.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that they're so far ahead of schedule compared to everyone else, it seems. And, I even thought that they would be a first-round exit just because, the youth of a team can only get you so far. And, with Joe Flacco's experience, you would have thought that this would at least be a closer game, never mind a 45-14 blowout. And you would have thought that Joe Flacco would have found a way to get the Browns on top just off of experience alone. But at the end of the day, youth can run you sometimes, right? But with how good the Ravens are, the ball's probably going to stop in Baltimore for Houston. But it doesn't mean that I don't see them potentially getting an upset in Baltimore and getting themselves to the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see them making any further than the Ravens. They may be the team of tomorrow, but the Ravens are the team of today. I mean, they armored up their roster over the offseason specifically for this season and to keep their quarterback Lamar Jackson happy. So this is the Ravens' year. It's Super Bowl or bust for them.
So the thing for the Texans is, I think, Adam, you put it perfectly. They are the team of tomorrow. Like I said, CJ Stroud has announced he's here, but again, what good is that going to do you now? You gotta travel, because look, it's all good and fun to win at home, but now you have to travel to Baltimore to face the best team in the league. I wish you luck, but the Ravens, I think, just outflank them. But I will add this one caveat here. And when I say they're the team of tomorrow, and when Adam says it, we really mean it, because they have a bright future. Their roster isn't exactly stacked with name value guys and splashy players, but they're getting the job done with the young talent they have. And don't look now, they have almost $75 million in cap space to play with this offseason. They could be really dangerous by kickoff next year. That is all.
I like it. Anything else you guys want to touch on before we move on? All right. We'll go to Kansas City. Dolphins just looking helpless against Kansas City. Final score 26-7. I'm surprised that Miami even scored a touchdown. And the one touchdown they got was on basically a fluky big play by Tyreek. And then that was their lone touchdown. But the entire game was basically just Kansas City. It just didn't look like no one wanted to be there, but especially Miami. And when L'Jarius Sneed with one of the best cornerback reps I've ever seen, and just planting Tyreek Hill into the ground, didn't even let him get out of his stance. It was, when you see that, you kind of just knew that the Dolphins had zero chance. And it kind of makes you wonder how tough the Dolphins really are. Because, and granted, they suffered a lot of injuries on the defensive end, but this Miami team just lacks toughness in general. Miami.
Adam, you're muted.
Adam.
Well, the issue is really that this team, I mean, this is an issue with most warm weather teams, is that once you travel to colder climates, that you're kind of screwed, because most of the time they get used to it. This is kind of the same thing with some colder weather teams. Once they go south, then they're not always the same team. The same case has been true for Aaron Rodgers for years. If you look at his splits in warmer weather climates versus the frozen tundra that he's used to, it's very different. It's very different the way he plays. But I think it does go past that, because they only beat, in the past 16 months, they've only beat one team above 500. And it was the Cowboys. It's the Cowboys who just got embarrassed this weekend. Well, again, that's another team we're gonna touch on. But like, that is eye-opening. And it tells me, it feels like those talent around Tua is really overshadowing the true talent that kid has. He's a solid quarterback. He's okay, but he's certainly not as good as the stats that he puts up suggests, because he has Tyreek Hill. You have Jalen Waddle. You have Cedric Wilson. You have Raheem Mostert. You have Devin Achane, right? This is the most armored roster I have seen a mediocre quarterback have. Actually, scratch that. Brock Purdy. But, you know.
Well. looks like at the end of the day, Mike McDaniel does not, in fact, wish it was colder. Now, the thing is with Miami, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but my prediction came to pass. Miami, like I said, has a lot of flash, has a lot of speed. And I said, speed and flash do not help you in the cold. And that is exactly what happened. Because I said this last episode, Miami is a team that can beat you in a lot of ways, but they cannot out-physical you. They cannot play tough. Mentally and physically, they are not tough. And I can already hear Miami fans crawling out of the woodwork and saying, but our defense was hurt. We didn't have Jalen Phillips or Andrew Van Ginkel or Bradley Chubb. To which I say, you're right. However, I didn't realize that they played offense. The best offense in the league this season, or at least the top 3 offense in the league, put up 7. That is inexcusable. And I think Adam's right about, Tua. It is high time we had a conversation about Tua. Because when you just look at how he plays and just his lack of mobility, and I'm sorry, he doesn't have an arm. It's just a check down to Tyreek and Waddle and then let them run it for an additional 15. It's bad. He's starting to look like a Polynesian Kirk Cousins. Except I would argue Cousins' arm is slightly better. It's just, and Mike McDaniel. Oh, no. I know it's like, oh, he's hip, he's relatable, he's the young hotshot who talks trash. It's like, okay, and where has that gotten them? This Miami team is all flash and no substance, all sizzle, no steak. When his gimmicks are taken away, when his tricks are taken away, he gets out-coached. I mean, you saw, like, the only team above 500 you beat were the Cowboys in Miami. The Cowboys are notoriously terrible on the road. And it's just, correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't he only ever beaten like 2 teams like above 500, like ever? I mean, it's only been 2 years, but still, it's bad. He cannot beat good teams. And the way I see it, this Dolphins team was exposed. And it's just a lack of toughness. And for the Chiefs, don't think the Chiefs are any better. They literally just kicked field goals the entire day, except for like a touchdown or 2. So the Chiefs, they got bailed out because they were at home, and they were able to put the clamps on Miami. But this death by field goals thing will not cut it, especially since you have to go to Buffalo, a team that hates you and a team that wants to beat you 150-0. Good luck.
A team that's hungry as hell to beat you.
Yeah. Well, like I'll say this game didn't prove anything for the Chiefs, for better or worse, because like, yes, they settled for a lot of field goals, made up nearly half of all of their points they scored, 12 out of the 26. The reason I say this doesn't prove anything is because it's a cold weather game. Of course, it's going to be low scoring. And I mean, this is mostly just the Dolphins being bad. So yeah, it's not the best offensive showing for the Chiefs, but I mean, they won the game, so they won. Let's see how they look against the Bills, because that's going to be a better indicator of whether this team is legit or not. If they're back in the conference championship, then who are we to bet against the Chiefs now?
Yep. I also just want to point out that I called this exact scenario about week 3, week 4 of this season, and how Miami didn't have a ton of cold games to worry about at the end of the season. There are only 2 that they really had to worry about was Black Friday against the Jets and then the game against the Ravens, which they got smoked in.
I do remember that. Yeah.
That's true.
And I said they need to win. They need to win these warm weather games, at least the majority of them, because winning games matters. Obviously, home games matter. Just saying, with the Texans, home games matter. Every single team besides one, or that was at home, won. And Miami didn't want to go out to Kansas City. You don't want to go out to Buffalo. You don't want to go out to Baltimore. and you put yourself into a spot where now you have to play in sub-0 degree weather, where if you won your games, you would have been in 60, 70 degree weather in the playoffs and not having to worry about anything and continue to play the way that you could play. And we saw it this past weekend. The only time that I really saw Tua really throw the ball down the field was that big play to Tyreek that resulted in a touchdown. Other than that, like I said, it was all checkdowns and screens. They didn't try to throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and let's just tackle that before we end the segment. Let's not forget, Miami had a lot of space with the division lead, did they not? They had quite a few games on Buffalo. In fact, 3/4 of the way through the year, Buffalo was dead in the water. And the Dolphins, started losing. Whenever you played a team away that was above 500, you got embarrassed. And even though you beat the Cowboys, what was that, like 22-20?
Pretty much, yeah.
You basically won by a score. And it's like, and then what happens? Buffalo goes on their miracle run, and you slide. Then either way, you still control your destiny. For both teams, it was a win, and you win the division. And Buffalo tried their damnedest to hand you the game, and you failed. Going into the playoffs, I knew this was an unserious team. And while this win proves nothing for the Chiefs, it proves exactly what we thought about Miami.
Yep. Adam, you want to add anything else before we move on?
Yeah, I'll just say that I place more, when it comes to the Dolphins, I place more blame with the fact that they didn't attempt many deep passes. I place more blame on the way the team was structured. Because if you live and die by the long ball, God forbid you have a windy, cold day like this, then you're gonna end up having some trouble. So the fact they were forced to do the dink and dunk game and they failed to do so just says more about the way the team is structured. And the fact that the Chiefs can win the ugly ones, right? The games where the defense locks down and you settle for a few field goals, maybe you'll get a touchdown or two. If that's enough, if they can do that in the cold weather, then I kind of like their chances against Buffalo, especially since Buffalo is that another team like that loves to live and die by the vertical air show.
Yeah. Real quick, looking at the most playoff wins by a quarterback. So Mahomes now with 12, he puts himself tied with Aaron Rodgers, and he is one behind Brett Favre, Ben Roethlisberger, and Roger Staubach, two behind Terry Bradshaw, John Elway, Steve Young, and Peyton Manning. He's four behind Joe Montana, and 23 wins behind Tom Brady. But that's kind of impressive for Patrick Mahomes in his sense, because he's 6 years in the league, already has this many playoff wins, and he's about to potentially surpass some legends before the age of 30 already. So that's just a little something to think about going into next week. So we'll move on. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into the Sunday playoff games. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown!
You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast. Chris Costich, Adam Wright, CJ Medeiros, going into the Sunday wildcard weekend. Sunday part of the wild card weekend. Packers making the Cowboys look like cowgirls. It was 27-0 at one point in the first half. Cowboys were able to get a score before the half ended. And then 48-32 might look like it was a really good game, but in reality, it really wasn't. It was just a lot of garbage time yards. Dak Prescott threw the ball 60 times because they were down so much. Jordan Love with a near perfect passer rating as well, or he did have a perfect passer rating, I should say. 16 for 21, 272 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Jordan Love, he literally looks like Aaron Rodgers the way he was flinging the ball around. Just the throws he was making back off the back foot and just slinging it out there. Receivers were wide open all over the place. Like, Stephon Gilmore is supposed to be your only real shutdown corner, and he was getting burnt by Romeo Doubs. Dak Prescott looked like he had the yips. They were just trying to force feed CeeDee Lamb the ball the entirety of the first half, and it wasn't working at all. The first pick by Dak was bad. The second pick somehow is even worse, which resulted in a pick six to make it 27-0. This game was so bad that Jerry Jones said that this was the worst loss of his life. It kind of just makes you think that there's going to be a lot of changes coming up in Dallas because of this game. And Jerry Jones, and the funny thing about this game is that it's finally now come out that Jerry Jones once said that he asked God back in 1995 for one more ring, for that third ring, and he wouldn't ask for anything else. And they haven't even come close to the Super Bowl since then. They haven't even made the NFC Championship since then. Jerry Jones made a deal with God, and it's come to bite him and his whole organization and the fan base in the ass.
What a time for Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, and Jim Harbaugh to be available. In the same time where they're finally realizing that Mike McCarthy isn't working out and they need to move on from him. If they don't get one of those three, then this offseason is a bust for the Cowboys. They have a team that is top to bottom loaded. I mean, I have no complaints. I know we have our feelings about Dak, but I think a lot of it's coaching. I'm not saying that Dak doesn't have issues. He certainly does. But I think if you have better coaching, we'd have a better read on what Dak Prescott really is as a quarterback. Because statistically, he's slinging it all over the place. He's a really good quarterback. The issue is the coaching is just so bad. And it's been bad for the past quarter century. Like you can match up when the coaching was good back when they were winning Super Bowls and when it started getting bad when they stopped caring about coaching. Mike McCarthy, Jason Garrett is really bad as a head coach. And then, so you decide to replace him. That's good. And you decide to replace him with the same guy except 80 pounds heavier. Please explain to me how that makes any sense.
CJ?
All right. So let's just open with the fact that Green Bay apparently in the playoffs just has Dallas's number come hell or high water. Second, Cowboys, I want you to sit down and I want you to look at yourselves in the mirror. You wasted this season. You had either the second best or the best season from Dak. CeeDee Lamb solidifying himself as a top 3 receiver. Your O-line finally having some remnant of health, and Deron Bland and Michael Parsons both making a decent case for Defensive Player of the Year. And you lost? You lost to an Aaron Rodgers-less Green Bay Packers. And look, I'm not taking anything away from Jordan Love, but everybody, myself included, thought this was just going to be a rebuilding year. Nope. Jordan Love saved his best for the playoffs and dropped 48 on you. And you got most of your points in the second half in garbage time just to try to make the score look semi-respectable. Oh my God. And I don't care if they won the division. I don't care, that...
They barely won the division.
Yeah, they barely did. I don't care. I genuinely don't care. I don't care about any of your accomplishments. You need, and I said this last year, you need to get rid of Mike McCarthy. Nothing will change if you do. And once again, stop me if you've heard this one before, but I also agree with Adam. He literally said that, there's a plethora of good head coaches out there, be it Vrabel, be it Carroll, or be it the great Bill Belichick. There is no reason with these people available for you to keep Mike McCarthy, who is literally just Jason Garrett, but not ginger and less clapping. I don't know. And what baffles me the most is that we all know the Cowboys are abysmal on the road. If you even watched a little bit of the NFL this season, this is not news. But it's the fact that this happened to you in Dallas. I know Adam likes to say, but to say the Cowboys won't win in the playoffs because they're the Cowboys isn't analytical. My man, I don't know about that.
It's not analytical.
It's not.
Just
and
not.
Yet, here we are. How many times has this been the song and dance? They'll never make an NFC championship so long as Jerry Jones is pulling all the strings. He may have been a great mind for football once. He is no longer.
He's a pretty good GM. He does a great job at drafting players, and he also brings in good talent through free agency and trades. He did that this offseason.
Personnel-wise, he's not the complete package because his personnel decisions are garbage. Like coaching decisions.
Coaching. He cheaps out on coaching, 100%. And I think that's the issue you have to point out.
And also, it might be time for his son to take over because I just want to give a quick little anecdote. In the 2014 draft, the Cowboys were this close to taking Johnny Manziel. Jerry Jones wanted him. And his son stepped in and took Zach Martin instead. Zach Martin, who's only the best guard in the league and probably a future Hall of Famer. And apparently, this isn't even the first time this has happened. His son has stepped in and made better personnel decisions. So a lot of this, I don't even think we can attribute, like a lot of their successes probably go more to Jerry Jones's son than Jerry Jones himself.
CeeDee Lamb was a very raw wide receiver prospect coming out of college. I think he was a popular bust candidate, and they decided to take him instead of drafting defense, which a lot of people thought they were going to take. People called him crazy. They called him crazy afterwards, but they said, yeah, he's crazy. But they picked a badass wide receiver who is now one of the best wide receivers in all of football.
That's cool. And look where that got them.
To the playoffs. So.
Okay. Yeah. And you're out in round one after being the 2
Not
seed.
Because of CeeDee Lamb, because of coaching.
Yeah. Cool. And yet, despite this, like it's not translating to wins. Jerry Jones needs to step away and maybe let his son or someone else take over, because as long as he's pulling all the strings, they're never going to make it, or at least get a good coach. And by the way, I know we can say, hey, maybe you should get Vrabel, Carroll, or Belichick, but there's another layer to this. Do we really think that Jerry Jones's micromanaging personality is going to mesh well if they get Bill Belichick with Bill Belichick's leave me the F alone, let me do my thing personality? There will be a big personality clash, and one of them is going to have to yield. And let me tell you, it ain't going to be Bill. And Pete Carroll will be the same way, and Mike Vrabel will be the same way.
I agree.
Something's got to give.
I agree. That's going to be the issue, and that is a Jerry Jones issue. You need to put your ego aside for once and allow the head coach to do his thing. It's bad enough when the owner is also the GM. Like that's a bad enough issue. But when you try to make it, if you're that insecure that you can't even have a great coach in there, that you have to have a say in all of the decisions that happen everywhere in your organization. I mean, he got rid of Tom Landry. He got rid of Bill Parcells. He
Got
wouldn't
rid of
let
Jimmy
them do their
Johnson?
jobs.
Or Jimmy.
It's funny. The thing with he
Yes.
didn't get rid of Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson left. That's the thing. Back in
Oh, yeah, that's
93,
right. I forgot. Yeah.
back in 93, Jerry Jones said, I want my power back. And Jimmy Johnson said, all right, I'm going to leave then. And that's how that relationship ended. And then
Exactly.
they got pushed over Barry Switzer to start coaching. They got another ring by the hand of God, and they haven't won since. Jerry Jones, ever since he took back his power, they've won one Super Bowl, but since then, like I said, that was because of the hand of God. Ever since then, they haven't made it
Because
back
of
to the
Tom
NFC
Landry.
Championship. What?
It was because of Tom Landry.
And
I mean,
Tom Landry.
And they still had talent back then.
Yeah.
Like now it's not like that. I mean, well, they still have insanely good talent. Like throughout the entire, if you have Dak Prescott and you have Tony Romo in the past couple decades, two quarterbacks who are very good, the upper echelon perennially amongst quarterbacks, and you don't do anything with it. You don't even sniff a conference championship. If you don't think they're the guys to win Super Bowls, fine. But you can't make a conference championship with those guys. Also throwing to the likes of Des Bryant, Jason Witten, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup.
Brandon
The list
Cooks.
goes on. Dalton Schultz, Jalen Ferguson. That's a reach, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think that Marcus Spears on ESPN before the Philly game said it best. Because he has played in Dallas. He went from Dallas to Baltimore, and he said the difference between Dallas and Baltimore is like night and day, because the coaches in Dallas, before they can even coach, they're all stressed out. They have to worry about this overlord of Jerry Jones coming down on them and micromanaging them on every single move that they make. Whereas in Baltimore, it's not like that. They don't have to worry about an owner breathing down your neck. So, yeah, Jerry Jones can create some great rosters, but he needs to take a step back and just continue to write the checks.
I got to tell you, the more I think about this, the more that we discuss all of this, the more I really want to see what happens if those two mix, him and Bill Belichick. I think that would, and they better be on Hard Knocks too.
It's funny you
there's
say
gonna
that.
Be a fight. There's going to be like a literal physical fight between these two old men if that happens.
It's funny
I
you
have my
say
money
that.
on Belichick.
Give me Bill in 4.
So Jerry Jones back in the 90s when Bill Belichick, I think it was either right after he got done with Cleveland or right around that time that he was in Cleveland. And he's told Jerry Jones, hey, I can coach your team. And Jerry Jones said, we're good right now, and Belichick said, keep me in mind. And Jerry Jones said that a couple years ago on whatever talk show that they have in Dallas. He said that a couple years ago. Maybe he's keeping that in mind. Maybe he's keeping that in mind now.
If they put their differences aside and actually work together, then they can easily win a Super Bowl. They have the talent to do it. They've had the talent for years. If they could just put everything aside and say, listen, I want to win a Super Bowl. I want to restore my legacy being Bill Belichick. Jerry Jones needs to restore his reputation being the great sports mind who we once knew from the 90s. This is and he still kind of is in some ways. They need each other. They need each other. Put your egos in check. Figure it out.
And another thing is that it's not even about egos. It's about like basic football philosophy. Jerry Jones is very high flying, flash, throw around money, big time draft picks on big time names, and Bill's more quiet, reserved, sit out in free agency, trade back in the draft. Like, it's not even about personalities. It's literally about philosophy. And once again, like the typical Texas Western stereotype, I don't think that town's big enough for the two of them.
Sure. But if Bill sits back and allows Jerry Jones to GM the way he does, and then Belichick coaches it, I think that's a great combination.
It should be.
I know it should. I know what could easily happen. I'm just saying what needs to happen if the Cowboys want to win a Super Bowl, because they're never going to win a Super Bowl the way they're doing it, the way they've been doing it the past few decades. They've been the butt of all jokes.
Fair.
And America's team should not be that way.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, we've been talking about the Cowboys, but before we move on to the next topic, I want to just say shout out Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. Oh my God, you've now drafted like your third straight great quarterback. I am mad. I am jealous.
Did it again.
Yeah, they did it again.
I also heard somewhere this has a lot of the same similarities to the Packers 2010 season. The Packers beating the Bears in the final week of the season, and they sneak in to that last wild card spot.
Oh, get out of here
Look
with
back
that.
at 2010, the Packers win the Super Bowl.
Let's just
No
move on to
way.
the next topic.
Maybe
I
we've
ain't
seen
Let's
entertaining
move on.
that.
similarities.
No.
I'm kidding.
We're not doing that.
Shame.
No,
Costich, bad.
the Packers team in 2010 was a much better team than what we have today.
Exactly.
Anyways.
Let's move on.
All right.
Let's talk about
Lions.
the other NFC North team.
Lions getting their first playoff win in over 30 years. This is the first time so long that Lions fans are finally able to text each other about a Lions playoff win. And to kind of put into context of how big this win was, there was tears. A lot of people crying. And I ended up getting a text message or seeing a screenshot of a text message from one of my buddies who's friends with Lions fans, if I can read it, or if I can find it. But regardless, Lions fans basically saw this as their Super Bowl. I feel like we won the Super Bowl, bro. I want to puke. This kid from Detroit at my work is at the game crying right now, like actually crying. Dude, I might cry. Literally never thought I'd see this in my life. And now they'll have another home playoff game next week. It's incredible. It's incredible the story that the Lions have put together. And good for the Lions fans, good for the team. Dan Campbell, a member of the 0-16 Lions, has finally come around full circle and brought the Detroit Lions a freaking playoff win finally. But looking at the Rams first, geez, Matt Stafford did everything in his power to keep his team in this game. And the fact that the Rams were supposed to be in a rebuilding year and they were able to be this competitive and at least get a playoff spot shows the type of job that Sean McVay can do. And the Rams are kind of like the Texans at this rate. They're a little bit ahead of schedule now in terms of where they are league-wise. Granted, the Texans are definitely a better team than the Rams, but nonetheless. And Matt Stafford was getting the hell beat out of him in this game, too. It looked like he freaking got killed on one of the plays. Like his eyes rolled into the back of his head, it looked like. And playing hurt, was able to muscle through it, did what he could, got the Rams to lose by 1. But at the end of the day, the Lions, it's their time. It's their time. But I'm not completely sold on the Lions defense still. It kind of felt like the Lions defense was about to blow the game. And then Sean McVay ended up using 2 of his timeouts in the third quarter. And so now they're stuck with 1 timeout left with 5 minutes left in the game. So in a sense, the Lions kind of got saved by McVay kind of being a jackass in that sense. But regardless, fantastic win for the Lions.
Yeah. I don't know how far this Lions team can go, but the fact that they're facing the Buccaneers, the 9-8 Buccaneers next week, and they're hosting them, that's huge for them. And they have a very solid shot at making the conference championship. Now, will they get past the 49ers, assuming that the Niners get that far? I don't think so. I think there's a bit of a wall there. I thought this Lions team was going to be much better than they have been this year. I don't want to take any credit away from them, but I expected them to be good, and they haven't been as good as I thought they would. As for the Rams, again, like this is a team that played above expectations. They were supposed to be rebuilding. They hit on some. I mean, they not just hit on some later round talent. They knocked it out of the park with Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua. And Cooper Kupp got healthy again, made that offense electric once more. That's all luck. And maybe they get better because Matthew Stafford isn't that old. He still has some good football left in him. But I mean, this is the Lions' time, not the Rams. And the Lions, they have some hope. They got hope. I just am not sure about the ceiling of this Lions team. They're getting pretty close to their ceiling, I think. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Especially now with San Francisco potentially standing in the way. But CJ, your thoughts?
At the end of the day, I just think Detroit wanted it more. That's really what I think it comes down to. The Rams, I think, have a few more stars. They have more flash. But it was just Detroit, like I said, their brand of tough, gritty, in-your-face, bite your kneecaps off football. That's what I really think won them the day. And much like you guys, I am also not entirely sure of how high their ceiling is. But it doesn't matter. If you're a Detroit fan, sit back and you can finally say things are turning around. We won a playoff game. I am not going to really say anything super negative against them. I'm happy for them. Let me just say, as a Pats fan, wow, this puts all that winning into perspective, doesn't it? Chris, you mentioned how you couldn't even text someone that they had won a game the last time the Lions won a playoff game. It's not even that. Really think. The smartphone in general was not a thing. Like these portable laptops and stuff, not really a thing. A lot of the technology, not even a thing. Heck, we're all Star Wars fans. Star Wars only had 3 movies back then. George H.W. Bush Sr. was president. Good Lord. Like, this was a truly different era. And the fact they had to wait so long, man, I'm just, it puts it in perspective. And let's talk about the Rams. The Rams are in a unique spot this offseason. They actually have a first-round pick. For the first time since Jared Goff, Les Snead has finally stopped saying F them picks, and he actually has they have a first-rounder to play with. And I actually don't know how much cap space they may or may not have. Do you guys happen to know this?
Not off the top of my head.
Because that can hold on. I'm here now. The Rams.
Are you on Spot Track?
Yes, I am. The Rams have $48.2 million in cap space, making them 11th overall. So they do have a little bit of wiggle room.
They have some money.
They do. And it's just, I respectfully disagree when y'all say that they're like the Texans, because Stafford is 35. You're not going to have Aaron Donald around forever. You have to start fortifying some of these positions where you're a bit older, and you got to do it now.
Oh, but they're not the Texans. Not even close.
Wait, then who? Which one you said? Oh, wait. Unless you said that the Lions are like the Texans.
Who said the Lions are like the Texans?
I know.
I didn't say. I said that the Rams were like the Texans in the sense that the Rams are kind of ahead of schedule right now. But the Texans are.
I mean,
in their own little area.
I was going to say, like, I feel like this could be if the Rams. I actually think are skating on thin ice. Like I said, Aaron Donald. He apparently almost retired last year.
He almost retired after the Super Bowl.
Yep, and Stafford is 35. We'll see how that works out. You do have some young guys, but you're about to lose some of your stalwarts to age, and you might be skating on thin ice. All I'm going to say is plan this offseason very carefully. Like, even one wrong move might actually send you back to the dark age, especially since you have a lot of good young guys like Nacua and Williams that, I mean, they've only been in the league for 1 year, but hey, those rookie deals expire fast.
And also, if you're out of all the positions that they could have knocked out of the park late in the later rounds, I think running back is the worst one. Not only because running backs are so easy to find, good ones, also because they age like milk. So if that's a cornerstone of your franchise, it's not going to last long. I think there's more value out of finding Nakua than there is Williams. Like, you can find a solid running game anywhere, but you have a star running back that you're basing your whole franchise around. That's not, no. It's Cooper Kupp and Puka Nakua who are the guys who are the key to why this team was able to really bounce back after such a tough year following their Super Bowl victory. But then again, they have their first round picks back. They actually have first round picks. Their first one since 2016 is coming up, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So use that well.
One more storyline I want to point out is before we move on finally, is the Jared Goff revenge game. Obviously, the big story was Stafford coming back to Detroit and trying to prevent Detroit from getting this playoff win, how everything came full circle. But really, it was Jared Goff that ended up stealing the show. All of Detroit was behind Jared Goff. There was many chants for Jared Goff in the stands, and many people forget that Sean McVay drove Jared Goff out of LA. At one point, he was one of the most hated men in LA. And here he is now as one of the most beloved people in Detroit. And with that, we'll move on to the next segment. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into the Monday Night Football playoff games. You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast.
Here's Edelman broken up, and the pass is no sign yet. Edelman comes down with a football. They're saying it's a catch. This is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Swings it way down the field to Watkins. Sammy Watkins for the touchdown.
You're listening to the Fumblerooski podcast by Power 88 Dean Radio and Secret Weapon Consulting. Chris Costich, Adam Wright, CJ Medeiros. The Monday night games. Bills getting the job done against the Steelers. They finally were able to get this game going. And the weather was so bad, you would have thought that maybe they even delayed till today. We could be talking about the Bills game at the moment as it's going on. But they finally got all the shovelers out there. They got the field ready to go, and Bills Mafia as active as ever, and the Bills getting the win over the Steelers 31-17, where they will now host the Chiefs next week. And this was a pretty tight game for the most part. Steelers, to their credit, hung in there for as long as they possibly could up until the last 10 minutes of this game, where the Bills finally put the nail in the coffin. Wasn't really a whole lot that I had in mind for this game. Josh Allen with 3 touchdowns, once again, kind of putting the team on his back. No turnovers this game, which was huge. But all around a good win for Buffalo. I don't really have much on the dome for this one.
Yeah. Bring back snowballs. Why do we have to not play these games? Just shovel as you go. Find some way, but the game must go on. And yeah.
I don't know, man. I've been to Buffalo. The weather sucks out there, man. Like,
I don't care.
When there's a travel ban, you got to follow that.
No. We're playing. Play football. Football matters. The show must go on. Bring back snowballs, man. It feels like every time there's bad weather that there's some sort of delay or postponement. Just get the game going, especially if it's Buffalo. That's a little soft. You're a cold
Yeah.
weather team who's supposed to be used to this weather, and you're bitching and complaining and saying you want to play in a dome. Don't make the same mistake the Vikings made.
Actually, so the new Buffalo Stadium, I don't know if you guys have seen the building plans for that. So the new Buffalo State, sorry to get away from the game, but the new Buffalo Stadium, they actually reached out to season ticket holders and said, "What is your biggest concern?" They said they don't want a dome, but their biggest thing is that they don't want they're fine being cold, but they don't want to be wet. So what do we
Well, the
have
two things
here?
kind of go hand in
No.
hand.
So what do they do instead? So they replicate the stadium out in Tottenham where they have the little bowl. The field is still going to be uncovered, but the stands will be covered. Now, the stands will still get a little wet, but the stands will be covered much like how the stadium is in Tottenham. If that
Listen,
makes sense.
just be a cold weather team.
I mean, they're still playing outside.
they're
still getting those
canceling half their
small
games.
elements.
Feels like half the time that there's a cancellation is because of Buffalo. Like, just get the game going. Play. You're
Still
a cold
want the
weather
fans-
team.
You still
You're
want the
supposed to
fans
be
get
used to
out
this
there.
weather. Don't go to Detroit. Like, come on. Give me a freaking break. I wanted to take one angle towards the Steelers, which is this team. I don't know what they need to do to break out of this little mediocrity phase, but they need to figure it out because you are tied for the most Super Bowls in NFL history. And you can't, all you can brag about is having above 500 seasons every year. Is that what we're going to hang our hat on now? Are we just going to sit in mediocrity? You are the mighty Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steel Curtain, and you can't go better than 9-8. That there's something that needs to be done there. The fact that they're settling on Kenny Pickett in the first round. If you use a first round pick if you use a first round pick on a quarterback ever, you are not settling on Kenny Pickett. You are going for the long ball, especially if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. You have good talent around you, but why do you have Matt Canada as your offensive coordinator? Why are you settling for Kenny Pickett? Find something better. Find a way to actually become a Super Bowl contender. Because you look at this matchup in hindsight. If we were talking about this 5 years ago, we'd be thinking, Steelers Bills? The Steelers are winning this by a mile. Nope. It's not that way. It's actually the Bills and the Steelers are the joke of the NFL now. Which should not be that way.
It's
the
bad
same thing with the Cowboys. Like, why are we settling for this?
It's bad when the quarterback that is most known for getting hit over the head with a helmet by Myles Garrett and then proceeding to get knocked the hell out in the next week is performing much better than your first round quarterback. CJ, your thoughts?
This is why I say whenever Steelers go, well, yeah, maybe we're just mediocre, but hey, Tomlin's extending his plus 500, or 500 or more, season record or whatever, this is why exactly I say, okay, what trophy do you get for that? Please show me the awards you get for that. I'm not saying Tomlin's a bad coach. Far from it. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that I don't know what it is. Well, actually, I do know what it is. You don't have a quarterback.
They're settling for less.
Yep. And even when Big Ben's twilight, it was getting bad. I mean, your defense, oh my God. Look, everyone likes to say, oh, the Steel Curtain, the defense is so good. This defense is a bunch of bargain bin rental players that are being held together by duct tape called Minka Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt, and to a lesser extent, Alex Highsmith. It's like you have 3 good players on your defense, and the rest of them are young, but could come along like Joey Porter Jr. and Keanu Benton. But it's just this, and then you saw what happened in the press conference, right? Mike Tomlin was asked about his future and just left. He has 1 year left on his deal. And let me tell you something. One thing, and I've said this on the show, that kills Pittsburgh is pride, which is why them axing Matt Canada halfway through the year was so instrumental, because remember what we said, the last time that they got rid of any kind of coach halfway through the season was literally before America's involvement in World War II. Unironically, it was that bad. And so, like I said, so Pittsburgh does not fire coaches. They just let their contracts expire and don't re-sign them. And part of me wonders, could that be happening with Mike Tomlin? Because, like I said, he's a really good coach, but something isn't working. And for all the chest thumping they do about their drafting ability, like, every year we get a good receiver in the draft. It's like, yeah, it's like you made a wish to get a good receiver, but you made that wish on a monkey's paw, meaning your wishes will come back to haunt you in unforeseeable ways. Every receiver that they've drafted is a head case. And it's just, there's always so much drama in their locker room. Like, it's not even funny. It's actually getting concerning. Like, just how toxic their players are getting. This preseason, we remember Joey Porter Jr.'s holdout. Remember that? Being a second-round pick and holding out? What? And then there was like Big Ben, who, was actively trying to set an example for someone like Deshaun Watson. There was Le'Veon Bell, who had the whole money debacle, and all these elite receivers you have, like Antonio Brown, Juju, Martavis Bryant, Chase Claypool, and now Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. I'm starting to think that in Pittsburgh, there is a cultural rot. And when you have players that have egos popping up like weeds, something has to happen, and something has to happen fast. I actually think, like New England and Bill Belichick, the Steelers could use a mutual parting of ways. And the Bills, yes, the Bills are heating up. Yes, you did end up winning the game, but you don't get any, hey, congratulations for beating the Steelers. Beat the Chiefs, then we'll talk.
I like it. Any last thoughts before we move on to the final game of Super Wildcard Weekend? Baker Mayfield continuing his redemption run with a win over the Eagles, and it wasn't even close. 32-9. Nice little revenge from earlier this year where the Bucs lost 25-11. And in the Bucs case, it felt very much like the game earlier this year. The Bucs really could have been in that game if they didn't keep stepping on their toes. And the Bucs kept stepping on their own toes especially in the first half. The amount of drops that these Bucs receivers had was insane. Like Mike Evans having 2 big drops. He's good for 1 bad drop, but he had 2 bad drops. Cade Otton, 3 drops. And he ended up having 8 catches for 89 yards for some reason. In the run game for Tampa as well, that was one of their big weak points. And even the run game was kind of popping off. Rashad White, 18 carries, 72 yards. Baker Mayfield, though, 22 for 36. Probably should have been better. But regardless, 337 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. And this is all while getting sacked 4 times as well. What an unbelievable win. What a great story Baker Mayfield has been after being chased out of Cleveland by Kevin Stefanski to trying to revive his career in Carolina and LA. And here he is now having a career year in Tampa Bay. It's unbelievable.
This is a great run for him, which was career saving. That's all there is to it. The Rams were his little short stint with the Rams towards the end of last season was a nice stepping stone to get that opportunity, that full-time opportunity with the Bucs. But his next contract that he gets is going to be a multi-year one, most likely. He's going to get a good shot to be a placeholder somewhere or to be a competitive quarterback on a team that's looking to contend for now while they're rebuilding. That's about it. I like Baker Mayfield. He seems like a good kid. He seems like a good leader. There are just some limitations you just can't overcome. He's not that good of a quarterback. I really like him. He's solid. He could be a starting quarterback on a team that's rebuilding and while they stay competitive like a Geno Smith, but I think that's about it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. He's a solid quarterback. He's a good dude. He seems like a nice guy. As for the Eagles,
let's save the Eagles in a sec. CJ,
Okay.
your thought on the Bucs and this big run and redemption tour that Baker has been on.
I also believe that his next multi-year contract, his next contract will be a multi-year one, and I think Tampa should give it to him because earlier we mentioned how their quarterbacks like Tua and Purdy, who maybe aren't the best in the world but are armed to the teeth with weapons. Ditto Baker Mayfield. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rashad White's breaking out, Cade Otton's breaking out, the O-line's decent, the D-line's decent. There's something to build on in Tampa, and all you need is just a little, I don't know how to describe it. It's just, you just need a little more because they did win their division, and even though that whole division was an abhorrent dumpster fire, they still won it, and they still finished above 500, and I still think there's like a lot more that they can do. However, what you want to do is avoid the Seahawks mistake, like where you gave Geno Smith that much money. I don't know if Baker Mayfield's going to demand that much money. I don't think he will. But overall, this is a team that I think has a slightly higher ceiling. And this beatdown on Philly proved it. Because from a name value standpoint, Philly's pretty good. But then again, they did have their own issues.
Yep. And with that, we'll move on to Philly. This was one of the worst tackling exhibitions I have ever seen in my 23 years of watching football. It was insanely bad. I just couldn't believe it. It, like, when Mike was from Squawking Eagles was on a couple weeks ago talking about how it seems that the Eagles kind of just forgot how to play football. This is like
the embodiment
this is
of
like the number one point right here is that they just completely forgot how to tackle. And it was so bad that the broadcast had it as a talking point. Like the start of the second quarter was the talking point. It was just so bad. 2 big touchdowns were made because of bad tackling. On top of that, too, yeah, you had A.J. Brown that was hurt, and DeAndre Swift couldn't get anything going on the ground. 2 back-to-back 3rd and 2s, they did not run the ball. And that has been one of the biggest things that Eagles fans have been tearing their hair out about is the lack of running the ball. Now, granted, Philly did go down late, so they kind of had to start chucking it around. But DeAndre Swift only getting 10 carries is criminal. That's just criminal. And Devontae Smith, he was the MVP of the offense that night or last night. Some of the catches he was making were pretty insane. He was doing everything in his power to keep his team in the game. Jalen Hurts, I don't know what the hell happened to Jalen Hurts. He sucks. But if we're gonna, and also want to point out Jason Kelce also announcing his retirement as well, which is pretty sad. Amazing career for him. It's too bad that it ends like this, but hopefully a first ballot Hall of Famer. Anyways, if we're going to give a takeaway out of any of this, it seems that all of Philly wants it as well. Maybe you fire Nick Sirianni. And yeah, he made a Super Bowl run last year, but the way that this team collapsed is just so wild. And the way that it happened too, And you could kind of see it coming from the beginning of the season. And you could actually see it from the Monday Night Football game against Tampa Bay back in week 3 or whenever that was. You could kind of see little glimpses of some turmoil going on. A.J. Brown freaking out on the sideline about not getting touches or just overall production of the offense. And more throughout the year, you heard more and more about this turmoil. And here we are right after Sirianni's yelling at fans in the tunnel. Yeah, congrats, you won. It's not the Super Bowl, though. Ever since then, they lost 6 out of their last 7.
I don't blame coaching. I blame the way the team was structured. This is why we don't win with run first offenses. Because if you're not able to throw against a team that can throw, then you're going to be left in the dust. Just rushing teams don't work out. And we were talking about this Eagles team all season long. We were saying they're leaning way too much into this rushing game. If one team shuts them down and forces them to throw more, then they're screwed. They're dead in the water. And this is what happened. Philadelphia rushed the ball 15 times. They averaged 2.8 yards per carry. Okay, so you abandon the running game. Rightfully so, because it's not working out. They threw 25 times. And Jalen Hurts only managed 250 yards and a touchdown. Not terrible, but if you're in a shootout, then you're going to lose 32-9. That's the issue. Jalen Hurts, I like his throwing ability. It's okay. But clearly he was leading on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So there's my issue. And that's why I never agreed with Jalen Hurts being an MVP. Doesn't have enough of a throwing ability for him to get that award.
Well, it's all come full circle, hasn't it? This is a disaster. And do you know how I know it's a disaster? Because well, other than that, yes. Thank you, Karine Jean-Pierre. Very insightful. I kid. But
every 60 seconds in Africa, a minute passes.
That's a Booger McFarlane, Jen Psaki type smartness there. But how I know, because Lane Johnson, who's widely considered for some reason one of the leaders there, I'm kidding about when I say for some reason, but listen, he says, and I quote, and I'll leave out the swear words because Adam will have a stroke if I repeat them on the podcast. We had 6 weeks to tell you how we were going to fix it. We didn't do expletive. Sometimes you go out there and expletive around and find out. And we found out. That was it. They didn't fix anything. When their game plan started falling apart, instead of trying to make a change, they doubled down. And Nick Sirianni, for all the trash talk he did, from heckling the Chiefs fans to, being snotty at press conferences, look what happened. You got embarrassed. And with all that roster, with all the talent on your roster, with that team, you were out in the first round. You had a collapse that mirrored the 2020 Steelers. Oh my God. How did this happen? There's just no mental toughness. There's no adjustment. And Nick Bosa, by the way, looked like he was correct when he said, I don't know if you remember, he said, we put out a blueprint to stop Philly. Indeed, they did. I mean, it's bad when even their brotherly shove or tush push didn't even work when they tried to go for 2. So for Philly, I don't know where you go from here. Oh, and by the way, shout out James Bradbury. He got benched. I mean, we knew he was a liability, but this man got benched. But yeah, back to what I was saying. I don't know where you go from here with Philly. I mean, everybody I know, and by the way, I have family, right, in that area, not in Philly, but in like the surrounding states. And they're telling me that everybody there wants Nick Sirianni's head on a platter. I don't think they're going to get it. I don't think they're going to fire him. The only way they move on from Sirianni is if they can get a Belichick or a Carroll.
Which this out of all the years, this is the year you're going to do it because there's
I would
all of
think
these
so.
good head coach. I don't think I've ever seen an off season where so many quality head coaches have been available. Carroll,
There's not
Belichick,
one.
Harbaugh,
Vrabel.
Vrabel, yeah.
The thing with Carroll though is that he's going to be in an advisor position in Seattle. That was the
I don't
unless,
know.
unless he
Un-
tells him to pound sand and says, "I'm going to find a head coach position somewhere else."
Yeah.
Which he could. And did you see what Pete Carroll said about his firing? He said the guys that made that decision are, and I quote, not football guys.
So he could just say, "Screw you, I'm going somewhere else."
Yeah.
That's
You go to-
exactly
Go
what
to the
I
Eagles. That's
would
exact.
say.
I mean, they look exactly like what the Legion of Boom was 10 years ago.
Save for good.
That's a
DB
team
play.
That's a team I would take over and probably coach it a lot better.
I don't know that Seahawks Legion of Boom team was something else. I don't know if this Eagles team could replicate that because you'd have to have Cam Chancellor hunting you over the middle, waiting to take your head off.
Let me rephrase then. They are structured the same way. Run first quarterback.
Oh,
They have a solid passing game. And they have a ferocious defense when its head is screwed on straight. They need to replace James Bradbury, but they have a really good defense that can be a lot better than it was this past year.
yeah, as long as they don't have Matt Patricia or whoever the other guy was.
Get
calling
that guy the
plays.
hell out of there. Who made that decision to have
I
Matt
don't know.
Patricia start calling plays after
Probably Nick Sirianni.
I would imagine.
He had bad stops in Detroit. He was bad in his second stint with New England. The only time that you could say he was good was his first stint in New England, where you could legitimately make the case that was mostly Belichick. Because once he left, the defense stayed the same. It's not like anything changed. I digress there. That's just a side point.
That's the thing is that this is the same Matt Patricia that let Nick Foles be Super Bowl MVP.
Exactly.
He did, but I care more about the fact that Belichick benched Butler. I think that was
We're
bad
not.
idea.
No, we're not doing this again, Adam. No, please. I'm
gonna stop you right there.
All right.
Yeah, look.
can.
I respect it, but I'm not batting this around with you again.
You place Eric Rowe on Alshon Jeffrey, you get exactly what is coming
It
to
would
you.
not have changed anything. It literally would not have. No, teams were picking on Butler that whole year. Their game plans were literally to target him. So,
he's still better than Eric Rowe. Much better than Eric Rowe. And we know what he's capable of.
And a golden trash bag is still better than a regular trash bag. What's your point?
Eric Rowe is also covering Julio Jones in the prior Super Bowl as well. And he was also guarding Chris Matthews in the Seattle Super Bowl when Chris Matthews, for some reason, was Randy Moss.
Eric Rowe, whoa. Respectfully, Eric Rowe was not on that Super Bowl 49 team. I'll stop you there.
He's talking about no. He's talking about 51, but they had Malcolm Butler and Logan Ryan, and Malcolm Butler actually looked like the Malcolm Butler that we know and love that year.
Yeah, and then there was a noticeable regression that year. Also, wait. So I don't know who was on Chris Matthews. I think it might have been Kyle Arrington.
It was either Arrington or Logan Ryan.
It was Arrington, and then they had to bench him. And then they benched him for Malcolm Butler. The rest was history.
No, they put Brandon Browner on Chris Matthews. And
that's right. And then somebody was on Malcolm Butler. They benched Kyle Arrington, but Butler was in that game, and
Butler
he started
on
Jermaine
really Kearse, and Rel Revis was on.
We're getting way off topic, and we're an hour 20 into the show. So
we'll cut it down. So kind of just to end, we don't know what's going to happen with Philly. It seems all of Philly wants Nick Sirianni's head right now. Chance of that happening don't seem very realistic, especially with the Jay Glazer report that came out prior to the game that there's no signs to suggest that Sirianni's job is in danger, even with a loss to Tampa Bay, which obviously happened. So who knows? Maybe we do see Sirianni get fired in the next couple of weeks or the next month. Who knows? Last thoughts before we end the show, fellas.
I can't wait for the divisional round. I hope there's better football because most of these games were blowouts, and the ones that weren't blowouts were still kind of boring.
I mean, Lions Rams was still knock 'em sock 'em type of game. That was
Uneventful at the end.
Yeah, that's fair.
That was a grinded out type of game. I love those types of games.
Grind it out, but you need a good ending. We need fireworks at the end.
Yeah. CJ, anything else from you?
Joe Flacco is not elite, kids. We learned that the hard way.
He was elite once, just not anymore.
Fire Sirianni.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he
Fire
was.
Sirianni. Fire
disagree.
McCarthy. All right.
That'll do it for us tonight. Thank you for listening. We have new episodes coming out on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard and Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have all our episodes available on Spotify, Spreaker, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and so much more. And be sure to follow our Instagram, Fumblerooski_podcast, and our TikTok, Fumblerooski Pod, to keep up with our podcast and the latest coverage on the NFL. Otherwise, from myself, Chris Costich, from Adam Wright, CJ Medeiros, we will see you on Friday. Over and out.